Before servicing this snowblower, always remove or disengage the batteries. To replace the self-propel unit, the battery box and PCBA assembly must both be removed. Start by removing the 4 T20 Torx screws that secure the PCBA box cover. Then remove the battery box cover, secured with 2 T20 Torx screws, one on each side. Next, remove the 5 T20 Torx screws that secure the inner cover. This will expose the 2 electrical contacts. Continue by removing the 6 T20 Torx screws inside the battery box, 3 on each side. Then remove the 4 5mm hex screws on the outside of the battery box, 2 on each side. Once all of the battery box screws have been removed, release the 2 power terminals as shown here. Then loosen the 4 5mm hex screws that secure the PCBA assembly. This will allow for removal of the battery box, which is secured with locking tabs on each side. Next, disconnect the 6 plugs inside the PCBA assembly. Then remove the 4 hex bolts that secure the PCBA assembly. Now loosen the 2 4mm hex screws that secure the adjacent wire cover. The PCBA assembly can now be removed. With the battery box and PCBA assembly removed, lay the snowblower on its deck. Then remove the wheels, which are secured with a locking pin. Be sure to keep the washers for reassembly. The wheel caps behind each wheel must also be removed. These are secured with a 5mm hex screw. Continue by removing the back cover on the self-propel unit. It is secured with 4 T20 Torx screws on each side. Next, remove the 5mm hex screws that secure the support plate. There are 2 on each side. Continue by removing the axle, which is secured with 2 4mm hex screws, 1 on each side. To detach the self-propel unit, remove the T20 Torx screw that secures it to the plastic housing. Then remove the 4 5mm hex screws that hold the unit to the steel frame. There are 2 on each side. The self-propel unit can now be removed. When installing the new unit, start with the single T20 Torx screw. Then slide the bracket toward the frame into the slot as shown. Each bracket is secured with 2 5mm hex screws. Now insert the axle and align the hole in the bracket. The axle is secured with a 6mm hex screw on each side of the snowblower. Reattach the support plate, which is secured with 2 5mm hex screws on each side, followed by the back cover, secured with 4 T20 Torx screws on each side. Then replace the wheel caps and the wheels, making sure to include the washers. Make sure the tread pattern on the wheels faces forward. Each wheel is secured with a locking pin and has 2 washers that should be saved for reassembly. With the wheel removed, use a T20 Torx bit to remove the gear from the wheel. Replace the gear only if it is worn or damaged. When attaching the gear onto the new wheel, take note of the gear direction and install as shown here, with the flat side facing the wheel. When mounting the wheel, insert the washer between the wheel cap and gear. If both wheels are being replaced, be sure to mount them with the tread pattern pointing forward. Please refer to the EGO service diagram and parts list for specific parts needed for this repair. Always use genuine EGO parts.